So what we're going to do is we're here to expose it, let people tell their story, and let everybody in the public see the horrors of the court system in Suffolk County, New York.
Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary Jacobs. Welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory. My next guest, I'm honored to have back on the program. I think this is his third time we've had him back on the show because this man is just so filled with knowledge. And unfortunately, we keep having events in the country that sort of necessitate him coming back, and when something bad happens, like these mass shootings that just happened recently in Las Vegas, Dr. Aranda is my go-to person. There is one bad thing about him, which is a good thing in some ways, but his bio is so freaking long, I can't memorize it. I hate to read it, but I have no choice. I actually did an edited down version, but I'm going to have to read it, and because, as I say, when I'm over 40, now I need my dollar store reading glasses, so I'm going to put them on, and actually, I think it makes me look smarter anyway, and I'm going to go ahead and read this. Dr. Roy Aranda obtained his degree in psychology from the Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology, Rutgers University, in 1982, a 2-year postdoctoral degree in neuropsychology in 2001, and a law degree in 2007. He's been a licensed psychologist in New York since 1983. Dr. Aranda is president of Long Island Psychological Consulting, PC. He performed hundreds of forensic evaluations and was an expert witness in several high-profile cases, including the Happy Land trial and New York terrorist trial with Sheikh Abdel Rahman. Dr. Aranda has traveled extensively and made many presentations abroad, and was awarded an honorary status of visiting professor at the John F. Kennedy University in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He has made frequent presentations at universities and professional organizations and has written several articles. Most recently, his article, Living in the Shadow, Plight of the Undocumented, Journal of Clinical Psychology, was published in August of 2016. A follow-up article is near completion, Living in the Shadows, Plight of the Undocumented. Dr. Aranda is writing 2 chapters that we published in an edited book, Crossing the Wall, The Perilous Journey of the Hispanic Refugees into the U.S., Sex Offenders and Their Victims, Myths and Standards of Practice. Dr. Aranda became president of the Association of Hispanic Mental Health Professionals this past May. He is a past president of New York State Psychiatric Association, past president of the Long Island Hispanic Bar Association, past president of the Hispanic Neuropsychology Society, and is on the board of directors of NAPRHSW. What's that?
National Association Hispanic and Puerto Rican Social Workers.
Okay, and holds a leadership role in several professional organizations. Dr. Aranda organized the Hispanic Neuropsychological Society's first conference, Forensic Neuropsychological Assessment of Hispanics, held at St. John University in Queens on October of 2014. And just recently, I was honored to be invited to see Dr. Aranda receive an award at the Nassau County Legislature about 2 weeks ago. So Dr. Aranda, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on the show, but I know it's an important subject today, which is coping with the specter of mass shooting. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to just correct, I'm past president of New York State Psychological Association, not the psychiatric.
Is there a difference?
Yes.
Okay. I always got those two confused, psychiatric, psychologist, also, psychiatrist, and I don't want to insult either one, so
it's ironic because you're saying this is my 3rd time here, so I guess that makes me a serial guest.
Oh, I guess that's true. And actually the only guest that I've had come back 3 times, but you're such a wealth of knowledge, and you may as well go to the top, right?
Because there is a definition of what a serial killer
whatever there is.
Not a serial guest.
So my first question is there a mental difference between a natural disaster and such as Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria versus an intentional act such as the Orlando nightclub shooting, the Las Vegas shooting, terrorist attacks? Is there a difference mentally? Because somebody gets killed is killed. You're just as dead whether the hurricane did it or you were shot. But there seems to be psychologically a difference.
Yeah, I would say so. And you also need to look at the type of disaster and the context, because there are natural disasters that people are more inclined to look at as something that comes with the earth. Acts of God for those who might have religious inclinations, as opposed to acts of violence, especially where people are victims of murder, where they're killed. But even in the realm of disasters, of natural disasters, you have those, for instance, the recent catastrophic hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. There were predictions. The meteorologists, they were aware that the hurricanes are coming. People in the zone or in the area of danger had some opportunity or ability at least to prepare and to evacuate. So there was some knowledge ahead of time. Something like a tornado or tsunami, which can occur instantaneously, people have no way of knowing it. Maybe 1 minute warning. A fire can be very sudden. It's an act of a natural kind of a disaster. But when you're looking at killings, and in particular these horrific mass shootings that we've seen just recently, regrettably the Las Vegas that claimed the life, I believe, the lives of 58 people, and just last year, June 12th in Orlando, 49 were killed, and these are mass shootings. It traumatizes people. It's like that another human being would do it to you. It has this thing that is just incomprehensible, and at least people feeling very terrified, perhaps angry, depressed, signs of PTSD, insecure. Many people will head for the hills, so to speak, or the so-called ostrich, burying the head in the sand and just trying to ignore and pretend something didn't happen, or taking matters into your own hand through aggression and blaming kinds of acts. So I see it as having a component that is in fact different and potentially serious and more enduring than acts of natural disasters that can have really long-lasting consequences. Well, we've seen the devastation in Puerto Rico, where the equivalent, first Irma and then 10 days later Maria, is like a bomb went off in Puerto Rico, devastating the entire island. That's obviously going to be affecting those people for a very long time, but it still has a different feel than somebody getting you, somebody out to get you. That leaves you with this paranoid flavor. Can I go to a movie theater? Can I go to a sports event? Should I send my kids to school? Should I put jackets on them, bulletproof jackets on them to protect them? You don't have that in hurricanes and in tornadoes. You don't have that kind of an apprehension.
Right. I want to talk about that, but one thing maybe you can explain psychologically that sort of struck me is you talked about 58 deaths, and I know I was affected by that. But yet, every day in a city like Chicago, let's say in a week, probably more than 58 people get murdered. I don't think about that on a daily basis. Do you know why, psychologically, why is it that we're all so more traumatized by 58 people in one day in Las Vegas as opposed to 58 people in 1 week, week after week after week in Chicago?
Well, I mean, you actually have over 100,000 people being shot every year in the United States. I mean, those numbers are huge, and the numbers of some of the mass and serial killings that we have in the United States pale in comparison to this kind of number. But it's the magnitude of like a single person or maybe with a co-conspirator committing something that's so incredible and devastating, and the media publicity, the media hype, it's comparable to what happened with 9/11, where you're seeing the news is playing every minute over and over and over again. I don't know how many times you saw the towers collapse. I mean, I saw the towers fall literally hundreds of times, and I continue to see those towers fall in my head. So it's that tremendous media hype and the media attention that focuses on it, and because we are so technologically advanced now, you can find seconds away across the world, people are seeing these images also. And then we're hearing about acts of terrorism in Barcelona, you know, with all the people that were mowed down over there by that truck. Germany. So it's something that we're just becoming exposed to almost on a weekly basis.
But are we becoming desensitized to it? Because there was some concern with the towers that because we saw it so much, people were becoming almost desensitized, or like in the movies, we see so many people getting shot that to some extent we're worried that people are being desensitized to violence.
I think what you see is maybe a certain amount of complacency after a period of time will kick in, and people go about, you know, doing their normal business and things like that. Right now, what we've seen is it's hard. It's sort of hard to put your finger on it, because what I'm seeing is more trauma now than I'm accustomed to seeing. And the reason that I say that is that we've had Harvey, Irma, Maria, earthquakes in Mexico, and we've had Las Vegas. It's like 5 major events within a period of 1 month,
right,
something like that. So it's something that I'm not used to. I haven't. I don't recall when I've seen this massive amount of traumatic experiences, natural as well as violent, occurring in such a short period of time. So my sense is that at this point in time, we're back on high alert. And it's also reinforced by the media. Like you find out, for instance, New York, right after Las Vegas, well, they started going on high alert in terms of taking protective actions and security, and Long Island, you know, what are they doing to make sure that we are safe? We're also just recently in Florida, there's a possibly what looks like a serial killer on the loose, and this is also now in the month of October. So, you know, what's going on? We're looking at violence, and don't forget Charlottesville was only 2 months ago, about 2 months ago. So it's something that's this phenomenon that's going on, that we're just focused and zeroing in on people doing bad things to other people and or being victimized.
No, but isn't it more because the copycats and more people see it, maybe, oh, this guy got a lot of attention, or is it that we're seeing more? I mean, it's not that we're seeing more. It is more common in today's society, or in today's in the world.
I mean, there certainly have been, you know, like what look like perhaps a somewhat increase in the number of these mass kinds of terroristic, and I don't necessarily mean you know, religious, fundamentalist, ideological. I'm using the word terrorist, you know, in terms of violence. You know,
but Dr. Aranda, is there a difference between if somebody's a homegrown terrorist, or it seems to me like we were almost disappointed when we found out that it wasn't an Al-Qaeda member or a fanatical Muslim, the Las Vegas shooter. Would it make it more easy for us to grasp and deal with that way, or somebody to read, maybe a way to, maybe I think the way I look at it is it's a way to redirect my anger. Because now who am I angry at? I don't even know why the guy did it. I don't really know much about him. It's hard for me to be angry at him.
But
what am I angry at?
But being angry at him, and you're right, he's dead. Being angry at him isn't a solution to what happens, or how can we protect society in the future from people like this. And you know, the reality of it is very difficult to predict. We're never going to be totally safe. So you need to look in a context of risk management.
Right. Well, let's talk about that risk management. You know, what is reasonable? I'm personally thinking about, you know, I take my granddaughter to country concerts all the time, and when I saw the thing, I said, you know, thank God I wasn't there with her. What would I do? You know, God forbid I'll be there with her. And now I'm thinking, do I want to take her to a concert anymore? Is it worth the risk to go see live music? Is it worth it? That's what I'm thinking now.
Well, I mean, statistically speaking, I would say yes. I mean, in terms of whether you believe it or feel it or emotionally, I can't minimize how you might feel about something or say to somebody, this is statistically rare, but it happens. So I'm not going to say it's rare because to you it's not rare. To you, obviously, it was very personal. Right. But I think that you need to consider a number of stages in this. What happens immediately is a crisis. So you're doing a crisis intervention, which is the immediate psychological first aid that you would be administering to people who are actually the victims of the crisis. And that works in tandem with people from other professions that are tending to the medical and the health needs of injured people and victims and so forth. Over a period of time, right now what they're doing is a psychoautopsy on the killer. Why? Because he's dead. So they're looking at everything. They're looking at social media. They're interviewing people. They've already uncovered a tremendous amount of information. So they're coming up with that psychoautopsy. But how are you going to be able to predict somebody, say if you remember the Aurora movie theater, how do you predict something like that? Or what happened in Orlando, or somebody who has such hatred towards LGBTQ members of society, or Hispanics? You can't predict it. So,
but how do we manage it? What do we?
Well, it's important to consider. Certainly there are some telltale signs. If you have somebody who's licensed or has been licensed to carry a weapon and had problems, either emotional or was arrested, or there were some concerns with that, society doesn't know this. So but people who are involved in working with these people and giving them access to the guns, there's a situation where you can monitor that person and be a little bit more careful that person doesn't have access to weapons. People who are engaging, bullying in schools, you know who they are. You know that they might create a problem or create a greater risk for individual. The abusers of substances and alcohol, the MS-13 gang people. These are some of the people you can at least keep an eye on and target. People who are on a terrorist watch list, those are the ones that have to be monitored. But society, things that you and I can do. Right. You talk about being nervous in a movie theater. Right. There are things we can do. Consider things like, do you have exit signs that are actually lit? Do you have cameras that work? You want to make sure that they work. You want to make sure that the pavement is proper and you don't have cracks there. You have the parking lots are properly monitored and that there's safety features. Perimeter, internal security, external security. You want to make sure that people who are walking into a building really are being monitored. Are they being checked? Do they go through metal detectors? Do they actually get screened? Do you ask them for ID? Do they have permission to be there? Do you check to make sure? These are some things that logic dictates, and that's what I mean by risk management. Those are some of the kinds of things that you can take. I wouldn't suggest for you, for instance, or for me, going to a movie theater where there's garbage strewn all over the place. The lights are half off. You see a door open in the back. It would raise questions to me about their monitoring the security of that building. We have concerts, we have hotels, we have Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum. These are places where large numbers of people go. And where you have large numbers of people, there's risk. There's risk, and there's experts that are hired to work and monitor on the risk. But the public in general, and that's why I'm glad that you invited me to the show, you need to be aware that there are things that you can do. Make sure that the school you send your kids to has locked doors, or whatever the security measures they're supposed to be implementing are being implemented. And that when things happen, you get notified as a parent. And that there's drills. These are the kinds of things. Will it prevent everything, every act? No, it won't. but at least it will prevent. One of the things we don't monitor instances of would-be acts of terror that were unsuccessful. And why were they unsuccessful? Because they looked great security. They decided to leave and they walked away. So we don't know the successful times. We just find out about the ones, unfortunately, that succeeded.
No, it's interesting. I was speaking with a friend of mine about going to a movie, and I expressed to him, I said, I feel like a sitting duck when I'm in the movie theater. I don't know if I want to go today, whatever. I was more anxious about it. And his attitude to me was, Gary, when my time is up, my time is up. And he doesn't bother him. He figures, whenever God says it's my day, it's my day. And whether that's realistic, not obviously, but I don't think that's a realistic attitude to take. But for him, it worked.
I think being cautious is reasonable. I think having fear to the point that you're paralyzed with fear, or that it's you're frozen from fear. That's an excessive reaction. Fear is an emotion. And it's okay to experience some fear, some apprehension, to the point that it makes you more careful. You avoid going to areas that are insecure, that are unsupervised, that don't have police activity, where gang violence is known to occur. Use some common sense there. Those are things that you can do. So being cautious, being careful. There's nothing wrong with being careful and being cautious. Don't stay out till 4 in the morning. I mean, I wouldn't want my child, coming home at 3 in the morning and not knowing who his or her friends are, and not having access to phone numbers, or knowing that they don't have access to a telephone, or that they don't comply with my request that they call me when they get someplace. These are things that you can do, and that's being cautious, that's being careful. I don't think that you want to be paralyzed. You don't want to stay home and do nothing. That's not a solution.
Isn't it balancing risk versus reward? Like, we have to go out and go shopping for food, but do we have to go to a movie? Do we have to go to a concert? And is it worth being in Times Square on New Year's Eve, for example?
Well, personally, I wouldn't go to Times Square, but that's because it gets too crowded, and I think it's easier to watch it on TV. But you don't want to people need to live. They need to go about whatever their business is, their obligations, being parents, being employees or bosses, working, and so forth. But part of life is to enjoy life, and if you want to really cut out a component. For those who are able and have the means, for instance, to go to a nice movie or to go to a concert, then it's really a shame. It's a shame to see them have to suffer because we're trying to look at a balance. Stay home, you're safer at home. I work with many patients who have been injured. They've been injured in accidents, either automobile accidents or workers' compensation, occupational injuries. And they say, hey, it's safer for me to stay home. But many of them are walking with walkers, canes. They're afraid of being pushed, they're afraid of falling, they're afraid of slipping, they're afraid of being out in inclement weather and being hurt. That's different. That's probably smarter. And maybe it is smarter for some people. Be careful when you go out on holidays where you have a lot of drinking going on. You know this. So be careful. Caution, and it's got to be situation and context specific.
Right. An interesting statistic, when I was doing some research for the show, the National Safety Council puts the lifetime risk of being killed in the United States by an assault with a firearm at 1 in 358. Some people have argued it's 1 in 370. Either way, it's a pretty bad number. The lifetime risk of dying in a mass shooting in the United States is around 1 in 110,000. So, which is actually the same chance of dying from a dog attack or illegal execution. So the odds are still very low statistically of being killed in a mass shooting, yet I personally fear being killed in a mass shooting more than I do being an everyday, this other statistic of 1 in 370. Why is that? It's clearly not rational, right?
No, but there's this aura around it. We seem to be drawn. When there's accidents on the road and it's called rubbernecking, people they tend to look. That's why
You
they
have to
call it
look.
rubberneck.
Right.
Because their neck.
And I don't know why we feel like we have to look.
It's we have this voyeuristic quality about us, and it's also for people who do the looking, it's almost like it can't happen to me. It didn't happen to me, and I'm protected. I'm okay.
Right, thank
so
God.
you're looking, and you're saying it happened to them. It didn't happen to me. But there's this aura. There's this mystique about looking at some of these incredible images and visual cues and burning buildings, and look at the movies. Look at some of the movies, The Towering Inferno, for instance, and Die Hard 1, 2, and 3. Look at all
by
the
the time we show it, it's 4,
incredible
5, and 6.
disasters. We're sort of like in some way driven to wanna watch this. So even though, as you say, and I've said it statistically, it's minuscule. For people who actually are in harm's way, I reach out to them and I extend, like my deepest condolences and an understanding that for them it was
100%.
not a rare. For them it was not a rare event. I mean, it happened to them. It's not a rare event for them. So I think that offering somebody, some sense of comfort or relief that, gee, it's very statistically rare. It's almost like a slap in the face for people who actually are at some point in time in harm's way or have been victimized. So I try to steer away from that. It's something that captivates us. We see it in books, we see it in magazines, we see it in the news media, we see it in movies. There's this mystique around it, and this is, I mean, at this point in time, the Las Vegas mass shooting is the largest mass shooting in the United States ever. Orlando was #1 last year, and now we have a new #1.
So for the people watching it who are feeling anxiety, which I'm sure there are people, and then sometimes you feed on it, the more it goes, what can be done to stop that so it doesn't keep progressing and getting worse? Is there something that can be done?
Yeah, a couple of things. Don't become addicted to watching this so much. Get the news. It's important to be informed. Get the news, but don't sit there over and over and over and over and over again looking at it. Try not to jump to conclusions also. A lot of people immediately after an incident, they're doing Monday morning quarterbacking. They're immediately coming up with diagnoses about, oh, this person was this, must have been somebody with this kind of a mental disorder. And the reality of it is that it's not, and that we don't know. You're not going to know for a long period of time exactly what happened, and there are people investigating this. Let them do their jobs. Children, you cannot sit there exposing the kids over and over and over to this. Because
of fear or desensitization?
No, because of how they're going to react to it. Children, depending on the age of the child, the much younger child lives in a magical world. And they're not able to understand it the way an adult does. An older child, an adolescent, is more successful at doing it. But you don't want, you need to figure out how to expose or talk to your children about these kinds of traumatic events. And I don't just mean about mass shootings, serial killings, but I'm talking also about tornadoes and earthquakes and hurricanes. Children are traumatized by these things, and they're very scared. They don't know if they're going to lose mommy or daddy or what's going to happen. So not to be glued to the TV and to try to engage in smart thinking in terms of risk management, maintaining contact with other people, know who your neighbors are, know if your neighbors need some assistance if there's a problem. If there's a flood or a fire, reach out to people. I think we talked about that the other day with post-traumatic growth. You need to somehow involve yourself, be aware, be alert, learn and educate yourself, and don't take matters into your own hands.
All right, Dr. Aranda, thank you very much for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to come here. Really appreciate it, and we'll have you back again. I'm Gary Jacobs, and thank you for joining us at Long Island Backstory.
Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans, 4, legalreform.com.